Welcome to Screentime, everybody. It's movies, streaming, and everything in between. Gary Tanguay along with Drew Yanno. The topic on this show is The Last of Us, which I will admit, at first I didn't really have any interest in watching because I'm not big on the zombie thing, and I'll elaborate on that coming up. It is created by Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin. Drew's going to get into more of this coming up, based on a video game, starring Pedro Pascal, Bella Ramsey. And I just have to mention, because I'm up to episode 3, Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett, who are outstanding in it. But basically what has happened is we've had a pandemic and the world is in complete chaos and we're still dealing with zombies. Drew,
but it's not a virus, it's fungal.
Right.
Not that most people care. And technically they're not zombies.
Okay, well, what are they then?
Well, I'll get to that at some point, but yes.
I mean, because this, I'll tell you people off the top, and the whole zombie thing, like The Walking Dead, I'm not interested in it. I never found it interesting. This, I have to tell you, the first couple episodes, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to stick with it because they have this fungus coming out of people's mouths, that's just spreading all over the place. I'm like, I don't hate it, but I don't like it. Like, it does nothing for me. It's like, it's just bland. It's like eating plain yogurt for me. A zombie movie is like plain yogurt. But I will give you this. By the time you get to the end of episode 2 and you get into episode 3, it gives you a reason to watch.
Correct. Yeah, so like you mentioned, it's Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. I think Pedro Pascal is great, and I consider him the new Burt Reynolds. He looks like Burt Reynolds. He's got that aura about him. Maybe a better actor. Not to, give Burt any shade, but I think
Burt was
Pedro's
always
really good in this.
Yeah, Burt was always good. Burt was always Burt,
Yeah, and Bella Ramsey's unbelievable. And here's the interesting thing. They were both in Game of Thrones, which is so interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. In fact, they, Mazin and Druckmann called D.B. Weiss, I think it is, and they're the guy who did Game of Thrones, and asked, is she any good? And they said she's great.
Right.
And so she got the role. As you mentioned, Craig Mazin was brought in by, not sure who brought him in, but Druckmann liked him because he liked Chernobyl. Craig Mazin, if you haven't seen it, it's also on HBO. He did the Chernobyl series that was multi-episode, and I don't know what you call it. I guess you call it a dramatization. It's based on fact.
A docudrama.
Docudrama, but it's fictional. It's not the real people. It's not
right
documentary, and it was excellent. Excellent. We all kind of followed Chernobyl when it happened, but this really gets behind the scenes, and we don't realize how close we came to total annihilation of the planet. But anyway, Mazin's a great writer. I'm a fan, and he's done a hell of a job with this, as far as I'm concerned. What I like about it is, you said you don't like zombie movies. They specifically wanted to avoid making a zombie movie. Now, that doesn't mean they don't act like zombies. It's not clear that these people ever die. It's just that they're infected. Kind of like COVID. Except people died of COVID, but not everybody.
Well, yeah,
these people
but,
all die. These people, none of them die until they're killed. And they can be killed, by bullets or knives. It's just they're alive, but they're consumed by this fungus.
Right, and they have things popping out of their heads and straw coming out of their mouths, and
to be fair, after the first few episodes, you don't see a lot of what they call the infected. They're there, but you see very little of it. It's much more about Pedro Pascal's Joel and Bella Ramsey's Ellie. And without giving too much away, cover your ears if you don't want to hear this. Joel has had a terrible experience the first day of the epidemic.
Right.
And the show picks up, was it 10 years later? and he's in Boston in a QZ or whatever they call it.
Well, they have a QZ zone, which is where people are who are not infected. Everybody
Right.
outside
And
is
try
infected.
to stay protected.
Right.
And he gets solicited to bring Ellie, and again, plug ears if you don't want to hear this part, who's a young girl, 14 years old, who has been bitten and infected, but turns out to be immune. Usually they turn within a day or so, right, and then they become uncontrollable, non-zombies, but they cause problems. And it's about him having to take Ella to Wyoming where they can get to a hospital and hopefully make a vaccine. So I gave stuff away, but you can still watch it. And if we covered your things, pull your things out of here. And it's about their relationship, and it's about the trials and tribulations and how they get there. And it's fascinating to me. And Pedro Pascal has this backstory that is in the first episode. I know you told me, Gary, you thought it went on too long. Well, it goes on too long because you really have to realize why he becomes the person he is. And what's interesting is Bella has a backstory that's revealed in two different ways: her origin and how she got to be with what they call the Fireflies, which are the people who resist Fedra, which is the government trying to protect everything. The Fireflies just want to be free people. They also don't like the infected, but they don't want to be controlled by the government. I just think it's really interesting. It's based on a game. I've never played a video game. Well, I guess I played Pong.
Yeah.
I played, one of those. I've never played The Last of Us. Druckmann created it. It's a great idea. And it had a really circuitous route to getting made. It was supposed to be a movie first, and Mason said, you can't make this a movie. You need to, have multi-episodes. And they finally convinced the powers that be that it should be, multi-episode. HBO bought it, greenlit it right away. And what I love is it was supposed to be 10 episodes. And I bring this up because of what you told me, Gary. It got reduced to 9 because they decided they better combine the first 2 episodes, because if they just made the first episode by itself, they thought people wouldn't keep watching it.
Well,
and you had that reaction.
Yeah. Do you know when the first episode ended originally?
No, but they combined the 2 so that they thought they must have tested it. That's my only guess.
Yeah, well, it's a good move because it's a good move because I would have been, okay, this is The Walking Dead,
Yep. And it's filmed in Alberta. It was filmed in Alberta, Canada, for tax reasons. And it was very expensive. And you can see from the CG, it had to be brutally expensive. The series budget, they say, was greater than the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones, which had enormous budgets.
Wow.
So that's a lot. But I think they're going to get their money back. This is going to go on. This is going to be watched. And they're going to do a second season. There was a sequel to the game. And then they're going to do a part 2, which they say is going to be multiple seasons. We'll see how that works out.
So is the first season based on the first game?
Yes.
Okay, so then the second version of the game will be the second season, or they'll just create a second.
The sequel plus more, I think.
Plus more.
We'll find out. It's not going to be for a couple of years.
Well, I just find it, of course, being from Boston, in Boston, and the thing that's kind of funny is, as you said, what is it? The second episode, they said 10 miles outside of Boston. And it's like, no, that's Wellesley. That doesn't look like Wellesley.
It shows mountains,
yeah,
and no buildings in sight.
Yeah, it looks like Maine.
Apparently, they've never been to Boston.
Yeah. But
my house was 10 miles from Boston.
Right.
But it wasn't a mountain anywhere near me.
No. So what happens is, outside of these zones, the country has been bombed, and they've basically dropped bombs on people because of the infection. That's the only way they could stop it. Which they didn't. So, you see this CGI of like the Prue, is halfway leaning over, and, you try to, I think You see like the old Fleet Bank building or something like that.
You see Faneuil Hall.
Yeah, Faneuil Hall and the old State House by Faneuil Hall,
the old State House, which gets blown up,
and the Golden Dome. So it's good enough. They did a nice enough job.
You're gonna like it if you keep going.
You're gonna like it if you keep going with that. But what I found interesting is I watch episode 3. Well, before I get to that, I want to talk about episode 1. I understand you had to set it up and you had to show Joel's pain and why he is the way he is, because the first episode is day 1 of the pandemic, and then you fast forward to either 10 or 20 years later, whatever it is, and you understand why he feels the way he feels because of what happens in the first episode. I was wondering if maybe that could have been done in a dream sequence, if it could have been done in the first 20 minutes, because one of the things is I wish that Bella Ramsey, who plays Ellie, had been in the first episode. You don't get to her in the second episode. So the first episode for me, much like Defending Jacob, dragged for me. That's the thing. It dragged for me. But
well, it's longer.
Yeah, it's longer. It just, okay, here we go. We've seen a lot of the first episode stuff to me, we've seen before, but you're right. I mean, if you stick with it, then you can get hooked. Because now I want to see what happens.
Which is true of most series, Gare. That's true of most series. You got
It is because they have the time. You know what? They have the time to do it. And I'm probably.
I stopped The Bear after the first episode.
Right.
I stopped. It wasn't interesting to me.
Right.
And then I loved it because you told me to keep watching. My daughter told me to keep watching. So, I mean, it's just the nature of things.
It is, because they have the time.
Give them a couple, 2 or 3 episodes. No.
Because they have the time to do it and they set it up. And I get it. And, so you stick with it, folks, if you do get frustrated.
It's all about Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. They've amazing chemistry. It's really good. And the idea that they're going across the country in any way they can is fantastic. Couple bits of trivia that you might like. Matthew McConaughey turned it role down.
Pedro's role?
Yes, he would have been Joel. And
still, Pedro's great, but McConaughey would have been great.
Mahershala Ali, your favorite?
Yeah.
Was considered, they say, from what I understand, it was never offered to him, but he was considered after McConaughey turned it down.
They're both great. They both would have been great.
Yeah.
Both,
but I love that this guy came out of nowhere. Yes, he was in Game of Thrones. He was in Narcos. He was in a couple of things, but in the Mandalorian, I guess, which I've never watched. But I think he's great in this. And I think it's going to make him the new Burt Reynolds. I just think it is. Yeah,
I agree with you on that. And we have on our YouTube channel and podcast, we'll have a top 5 of our top 5 Burt Reynolds movies coming up. Big guy. I want to talk about Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett, because that's episode 3. That's where I've left off. And they play Bill and Frank, and you kind of figure out what's going on here after a while.
Well, even in the beginning, you sort of figure out what's going on.
Yeah, maybe. First of all, I love these 2 actors. I mean, Bartlett in The White Lotus was wow. I mean, phenomenal.
I've not seen The White Lotus.
Oh, well, I don't know if you would like The White Lotus. You got to be patient. It's quirky, but Bartlett in The White Lotus, he won Best Actor for that. Either the Emmy or the Golden Globe. I can't remember which. He was awesome. So when I was looking at the IMDb and I saw Murray Bartlett was in it for 1 episode and Offerman was in it for 1 episode, you have people like that go, they see a project like this and they'll go, oh, I'll do 1 episode.
Sure.
Because it's so damn good.
They're so good. And I thought, as I was watching, so why does this keep going on like this? I got it. I understand it. It's an interesting take. But when you get to episode 4, you understand it.
Right.
Why they did it. It's really well done. I got to give them a lot of credit for how well done it is.
So just to give people a hook here to keep you going, like if you're an Offerman fan, most people are, Offerman he's in he's still in Massachusetts. He's west of Boston, pick a town, right? And
I think it's Lincoln, but I'm not sure.
They said Lincoln, but yeah,
it doesn't look like Lincoln.
It doesn't look he's getting security cameras.
He's a prepper, and he has he has an electric fence around the thing, so
Right.
nobody
He's
can
like,
get
yeah,
in.
he's a don't tread on me guy. He's a survivalist. Yeah.
And you see him in the beginning. He's
Looking on his
rented the
camera.
Home Depot. He's
Yeah.
figured out a way to make electricity. It's very clever.
It's very clever. And he's like, they're all the feds, as you mentioned, they're trying to take everybody away, to take them either to a QZ zone or if they're infected to terminate them. And he's like in his basement. He's in his basement. He goes, "You're not getting me,"
Yeah.
And then, he comes out of his house and he's got the gas mask on. He's got the machine gun, and he finds out he's all alone. And he's like, "Ha ha!" And he like owns the place. He makes his own compound. Then Murray Bartlett shows up, traveling from Baltimore.
Don't give
They
away all
lock
the stuff.
eyes.
Don't give it all away.
No, don't give it all away. But I'm just saying, this kept me going because I'm like, okay, these are great actors. These guys are funny. They're good. There's humor in it.
It's a good story.
It's a good
and
story.
It's connected to the plot. That's what I worried about. I'm
Right.
thinking, how's this connected to the plot? They just
I'm sure it is.
tack this on. I don't understand.
Right.
And then it's very well done.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great line in there where he says, "Okay, folks, you understand what's going on, right? Everybody's out for themselves. Armageddon, the world has been blown up and it's a mess. So, Offerman is hoarding all his food." And then he goes to Bartlett. He goes, "I can't let you go." Or he says, "I can't give you food because then you'll be telling everybody to stop at my place to get a free meal like I'm an Arby's." And then Bartlett goes, "Well, actually, you can't get a free meal at an Arby's. You have to pay." And I'm
Right.
like, I'm
It's
laughing
funny.
because I'm like, okay, this is fun. It's good stuff. I really like that. When I saw those two, I was like, this is going to be good.
You get to episode 3 and start episode 4, you're hooked. You're in for the rest.
Good.
So I highly recommend it.
I want to mention real quick, Merle Dandridge is the actor's name who plays Marlene in episode 1 and 2.
Yeah.
He's the head of the Fireflies in the Boston QZR, whatever it is. And then in the making of The Last of Us, they were talking to her, and she auditioned to be Marlene in the video game back in 2012. And she didn't get that, but she got Marlene in this part. So I thought that was pretty good. I guess
Tells you don't give up.
Video games, yeah, thank you. Video games, man, and why not? I mean, I don't play them, but my kids play them. You take a look at video games, there's plots and storylines and levels and arcs and,
Well, they're built for episodic because they're not designed to end.
Right.
So, but anyway, I whether this was based on a game or not, I really enjoyed it. And it's not all zombie all the time. But,
got it.
So I recommend it.
The Last of Us. Drew says it's a go. I'm almost there. Make sure you check out our top five Burt Reynolds movies, also on our YouTube channel and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. With Drew Yanno, I'm Gary Tanguay. This has been another edition of Screentime, movie streaming and everything in between.